Warning, the story you are about to hear contains graphic descriptions of sexual assault, kidnapping, and murder. It deals with real-life violence, trauma, and the devastating effects of crime on individuals and families. Some scenes and details may be extremely disturbing or triggering to sensitive viewers. This video is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. Please take care of yourself while listening, and know that the content is shared to inform, to reflect on the consequences of violent actions, and to honor the courage of those affected by these events. If you feel uncomfortable with intense subjects, we encourage you to consider your own well-being before continuing. The events described in this story are real, and they are heavy, but they are important to understand, as they reveal the reality of human resilience, the fight for justice, and the fragility of life when confronted with danger. She moved to a city full of lights, full of life, and full of dreams. A city where anything feels possible, a place where people come to chase success, to start over, to build something new. Skyscrapers tower over busy streets, music flows from every corner, and the nights are alive with promise. But in a city like this, the bright lights can hide dark shadows. She came here hoping for a fresh start, believing she could leave the past behind. She dreamed of building a life that felt safe, full of opportunity, and full of hope. Every day she walked streets bustling with people, unaware of the eyes that watched from the shadows. Every corner she turned, every familiar street she passed held the possibility of freedom, and the possibility of danger. Because sometimes the past doesn't stay buried. Sometimes it follows quietly, patiently, waiting for a moment to strike. And when that moment comes, it can shatter everything you've worked for, everything you love, and everything you thought was safe. This is a story of courage, of fear, and of the invisible battles that happen in a city that never sleeps. It's about what happens when ordinary life turns extraordinary in an instant, when danger is closer than you think, and when one person's strength is all that stands between survival and disaster. Before we go any further, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You don't want to miss a single story like this. Stories that uncover the truth, explore real-life courage, and reveal the fight for justice in the face of danger. Stay with us, because what you're about to hear is a story you will never forget. Jokisha Brown was a woman full of life, full of dreams, and full of love for her son. She grew up in Jacksonville, Florida, a city that shaped her in quiet but lasting ways. Friends and family described her as kind, generous, and someone who could light up a room just by being there. She was more than a mother, more than a daughter. She was someone who believed in the power of starting over, of making life better, no matter the obstacles. By 2016, Keisha decided to take a bold step. She packed up her life and moved to Atlanta, Georgia. It was a city buzzing with opportunities, especially for someone like her, who dreamed of acting and modeling. Atlanta was often called the Hollywood of the South, and Keisha wanted to be part of it. She wanted to pursue her career, to make a name for herself, and to build a safe, happy life for her son. Life in Duluth, a quiet suburb of Gwinnett County, seemed perfect. The neighborhood was calm, the streets were lined with trees, and for a brief moment, it felt like the fresh start she had been searching for. Keisha's days were filled with auditions, modeling gigs, and time with her child. She had hope, and she had ambition, and she believed that hard work could protect her from the dangers of the world. But danger has a way of finding those who are trying to move forward. Her ex-boyfriend, Alfredo Capote, had been a part of her life before she moved to Georgia. When their relationship ended, instead of letting go, he became obsessed. His obsession quickly grew dangerous. At first, it was unwanted calls, unexpected appearances, and constant messages. Then it became more threatening, more violent, and more frightening. By April 2016, that danger exploded in the most violent way imaginable. Capote broke into Keisha's home in Duluth. He didn't just come to threaten, he came to hurt. He attacked Keisha inside her own house while her young son was there. The terror of that moment is almost impossible to imagine. A mother fighting to survive while her child is forced to witness the violence. After the initial attack, Capote kidnapped Keisha, taking her far from the home she had tried so hard to make safe. He transported her across county lines to a hotel in Cobb County. Once there, the assault continued. This wasn't random violence, it was deliberate, targeted and cruel. He isolated her, cut her off from anyone who could help, and showed that he viewed her as someone he could control completely. But Keisha's courage did not fail her. She found a way to escape, and the next day she reached out to a stranger for help. That person stepped in, guiding her to safety and to law enforcement. In those moments, Keisha not only survived physically, she took the first steps toward reclaiming her life and exposing the man who had terrorized her. Law enforcement began moving on paper. Warrants were issued for Capote's arrest, charging him with rape, kidnapping, aggravated sexual battery, false imprisonment, and armed robbery. The U.S. Marshals labeled him armed and dangerous, and the Southeast Regional Fugitive Task Force became involved. By all rights, Capote should have been captured immediately. But the reality was far darker. Despite all the warnings, despite his known history, Capote remained free. He vanished from the authorities' grasp, moving like a ghost while Keisha tried to rebuild some semblance of normal life. Every day was filled with fear. Every unexpected noise or call could signal that he had returned. She had done everything a survivor could do. She reported the crimes, she cooperated with police, and she sought help. Yet the system failed to protect her. Those weeks after the April attacks were terrifying. Keisha lived in constant fear, but she did not give up. She focused on her son, on small daily routines, and on keeping her life moving forward. She went to auditions, she attended modeling sessions, and she tried to push away the memory of what had happened. But the shadow of Capote's violence never left her. By the summer of 2016, Keisha was trying to reclaim a sense of normalcy. She had survived the terror of April. She had fought to protect herself and her son, and she was determined to keep moving forward. But the danger that had shadowed her life was not finished. Capote was still out there, and he was still dangerous. On July 1st, 2016, the day before her 36th birthday, Keisha drove to a strip mall on Cheshire Bridge Road in Atlanta. She had a simple plan: to visit a beauty salon, to have her hair and makeup done, and to take a small moment for herself before celebrating her birthday the next day. It was an ordinary activity, nothing high risk, nothing out of the ordinary, but ordinary would not save her that day. While Keisha sat in her Mercedes SUV in the parking lot, Capote approached. What happened next was brutal and calculated. Shots were fired into her vehicle. Keisha was struck multiple times. She died at the scene, slumped in the driver's seat of her car. It was an execution, not a random act of violence. Whoever had done this had studied her movements, waited for a moment of vulnerability, and struck with deadly intent. The Atlanta Police Department took the lead on the investigation, quickly linking the murder to the outstanding warrants for Capote in Gwinnett County. The U.S. Marshals escalated the case, offering a reward for information that could lead to his capture. But Capote had vanished once again. He was a ghost, moving unseen, while the manhunt began. Capote did not go into hiding quietly. He fled Georgia and settled in Caddo Parish, Louisiana, near Oil City. There, he joined a counterfeit check operation, printing and distributing fake payroll checks. This was no small-time scheme. The operation was significant and sophisticated, allowing him to live, move, and hide while authorities across multiple states were searching for him. Capote had not only shown he could commit extreme violence, he had also proven he could live under the radar using crime to fund his freedom. The fugitive life finally ended on April 18, 2017. Deputies in Louisiana, investigating the counterfeit operation, arrested Capote in an apartment complex. They quickly confirmed his identity. The man they had been searching for over the murder of Jokisha Brown and for months of violent assaults was finally in custody. He faced charges in Louisiana for the fraud and in Georgia for the violent crimes he had committed against Jokisha. After Capote was arrested, the fight for justice moved into the courts. Capote had been sentenced in Louisiana for fraud, but Georgia prosecutors were ready to bring him to trial for the violent crimes he had committed. Moving a prisoner from one system to another is complicated, and it is governed by a law called the Interstate Agreement on Detainers, or IAD. The law is meant to ensure that prisoners facing charges in another jurisdiction receive a speedy trial. But in Capote's case, it became a legal battle that lasted years. Capote claimed he had sent the required IAD request from federal prison years earlier. His lawyers argued that Georgia had sat on the paperwork too long, and that under the law, the state had failed to bring him to trial within 180 days. If the courts agreed, the charges in Georgia could have been dismissed entirely, and he could have walked free despite everything he had done. The prosecutors in Gwinnett County fought back. They said they never received the request. They searched records, filing systems, and mail logs, but there was no evidence that Capote's notice had arrived properly. The courts had to decide, had the state failed, or was Capote's claim based on a lost letter? The case moved through hearings, appeals, and even to the Supreme Court of Georgia. Every step of the way, tension grew. If the courts sided with Capote, decades of careful investigation and evidence could have been thrown out. For Jokisha's family, the thought was unbearable. In the end, the courts ruled in favor of the state. Capote's motion to dismiss was denied, the appellate courts affirmed the decision, and the Supreme Court declined to review it further. The legal system, slow and sometimes frustrating, finally allowed the prosecution to proceed. Capote remained in custody, facing the original charges for rape, kidnapping, aggravated sexual battery, home invasion, and more. These charges carried the possibility of life in prison, and they represented the strongest path to justice for Jokisha. The case highlights how fragile justice can be. A single lost letter could almost have allowed a violent criminal to escape punishment. It also shows how relentless survivors, families, and prosecutors must be to navigate the system, fight technicalities, and hold offenders accountable. For Jokisha Brown's family, there is still no true closure. She is gone, and no verdict can bring her back. But the court's decision to move forward ensures that the man who took her life will face the consequences of his actions. Her story is a reminder of courage, resilience, and the importance of fighting for justice, even when the system seems slow or imperfect. Jokisha lived with hope, love, and strength. She survived unimaginable terror once and faced fear with bravery. And even though her life was cut tragically short, the fight to honor her memory, protect her son, and hold her killer accountable continues.